Okay.
Okay, we can get started then. So we all know the empathy circle process. So we could just kind of jump right in. And we have our topic of share your feelings on gun violence and mass shootings. We had the recent, here in California, we had the recent Gilroy shooting. So that was just like about an hour and a half from where I'm located. And then we had the Dayton and El Paso shooting. So we just sort of, talk about that, and uh, we can kind of just jump right into it. And if anyone wants information about the Empathy Circle, they can go to empathycircle.com to see how the Empathy Circle practice works. And so who would like to start and who would like to speak to?
Are we doing introductions or just we're just gonna start?
I was just going to jump in since we all know each other. So,
Well, people watching don't.
okay, sure. Then I'm Edwin Rutch, Director of the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy. Been working on topic of empathy for about 13, 14 years, trying to build a more empathic society, and located here in the San Francisco Bay Area, Berkeley area. And yeah, politically, I would say I'm on the empathic side. So that's me.
Okay, I'm Bill Filler. I'm also in the San Francisco Bay Area in the East Bay. I've worked with Edwin for a little over a year now, and I'm a retired special education teacher. And as I say, I'm on the left, but it's complicated.
Hello, my name's David, and I am currently back in Alabama. And I've spent a long time in the Bay Area, so I got a lot of contact with a lot of deeply conservative areas and deeply liberal areas. And I identify as part of the right, but I would like to consider myself, not two-dimensional. I try to keep an open mind and use different philosophies and ideas to try to make sense of the world. So, but for the most part, if I attach myself to a right-wing frame of things.
Hi, my name is Karolina Kubiak. I'm calling from Central Europe, harbor city of Gdańsk in north of Poland. My political leanings are radical left with Gandhian methods, Gandhian means. I'm also a member of Extinction Rebellion.
We're doing intro, Sophia. You want to just a short intro?
Is my sound on?
Yep, hearing you.
My name is Sophia. I'm from Sweden, Malmo. Political leaning is to the left, empathic. Yeah, I don't know what you were asking.
That's about it. Yeah, just
make sure Sophia knows. Sophia, you know that you're being recorded now.
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So we were just jumping right into it. You didn't give an explanation of how to do the empathy circle because everybody already knows the practice that's here. And the topic is just sharing our feelings on gun violence and the mass shootings. And what about time limits? What's a good limit? Any thought on that? Do you have just 6 minutes? Okay, giving it a little bit more. Sometime we can even do away with them. But somebody want to time keep? Bill, would you be willing to time keep or?
Yeah, I have my phone is muted. A little bit late.
Okay. Well, okay. I'll start. David, can I speak to you?
Sure, I'm listening.
Okay, so the issue of gun violence, I feel, just some sadness coming over me right now because I was personally affected by it. That my partner, her cousin, was in one of the shooting, was actually shot and killed in a shooting in back east. He was a journalist, and yeah, he was killed in the I think the Herald. It was I can't remember the name of the newspaper. He was a journalist, and there's someone came into the newspaper that he was working at, and he was killed. So yeah, let's start with that.
Okay. You said that you were this topic of recent mass shootings kind of hits home, and I kind of spaced out. You have to fill in some of the details. That someone that your partner knew, a journalist, was recently killed.
Her cousin, actually, her cousin.
Okay, her cousin was killed, and he was a journalist, and I'm guessing he was at the Gilroy Garlic Festival.
No, it was back east. Harrisburg Gazette, I think it is. There was 6 journalists killed at a newspaper, maybe about almost a year ago, I guess.
So about a year ago, someone that your relative of your partner, cousin, got killed. Someone I guess shot a bunch of journalists or something.
Yeah.
And by a year ago, so this hits home for you.
Yeah, and in fact, when I found out about it, I was in the middle of an empathy circle, so it was just like it was. Yeah, Bill remembers that, and so it's just this is a lot of people are being affected by by these shootings. Besides, everyone's affected by just the insecurity of that this happens on a more and more regular basis in the United States. So yeah, I guess just that aspect, everyone is affected in some way.
So you were just kind of reiterating how you were you feel connected, affected by a lot of this going on. And you feel like a lot of people, either directly or indirectly, are being affected by an increase in gun violence, I guess.
Yeah. And this person actually, Joan, my partner Joan and I, we'd gone back east. Well, we'd gone to Pennsylvania to the hospice where her mother was passing away. She had a cerebral hemorrhage, and we were at the hospice there just several months before the shooting, and her cousin was there. So he and I were actually sitting at the deathbed of Joan's mother. And we were talking, and so and he was really had a great relationship with Joan's mother, because his parents had passed away, and she'd been sort of a substitute parent in a sense. So they they had a pretty close relationship. So it was so anyway, it was just I actually knew him, had talked to him, so. It was really affected by it.
Yeah, you were talking about how that you had gotten a chance to get to know this individual recently before they were killed. So I'm guessing that affected you more deeply because you actually got to know this individual.
Yeah, and that being said, I do see that this issue might be something of gun violence, might be something for the empathy circle or the empathy movement. Is it getting a group of people and setting up tents, empathy tents on the Capitol Mall in front of the Congress, and say, we're not leaving here until you all have empathy circles across the political divide to talk about this issue. That's something I've been thinking, that it might be like an issue to have as to promote the empathy movement, because it's really the politicians aren't talking constructively with each other, as well as the people affected in the gun lobby and so forth aren't having, real conversations. And that's something we could maybe work at promoting.
Yeah. So you were thinking about different strategies you could use to employ the empathy circle, maybe, protest or camp out in front of a city hall or in a government building and demand politicians to have an empathy circle.
Yeah. Okay, time.
No. It's
45 seconds. Oh, yeah. It's actually in the Capitol Mall, in Congress. Get right there. Go right to Congress is kind of the idea.
Okay. So you were more specific. You're talking about the Capitol Mall. I didn't know there was a Capitol Mall. But
Yeah, the big mall in front of the, where the lake is. I think that's called the Capitol Mall. So
never been.
okay.
Well, okay. Sorry, this is not.
Yeah, I feel heard.
Okay, I guess I'll choose Bill.
Okay, listening.
Yeah, I mean, I try not to like jump into topics too much when they're really just super embraced and hot and trending, because I find it kind of pretty obnoxious how a lot of people have short attention spans and they only talk about like, whatever is immediately being shoved in front of their face. All of a sudden, everything's urgent when things have been going on for a while. So, but I felt I'm in the mood for empathy circle, so I'll talk about this.
Okay, so you find that you don't like talking about things when an issue is really hot and then people are really agitated and they're really not at their best listening and exchanging ideas. They're mostly, espousing whatever position they have. But you're in the mood for an empathy circle, so you'll approach the subject.
Yeah. I couldn't help, like everyone, I'm probably couldn't help in this country at least. I'm not sure what the worldwide coverage is on this. Um, I mean, every country has its problems and stuff, but it's everywhere. So it seems like everyone has opinion, and due to the closeness of elections here, it's heavily politicized.
Okay, so you feel this is a worldwide problem that takes some thinking in, and then right now it's being overly politicized. I'm kind of getting that. You didn't say that, but I'm kind of feeling that. Is that correct?
I mean, I don't know what's going on with the other world. I'm assuming the other countries have their own problems, but as far as this country's, I'm speaking because there's other people from other countries here.
Right. Okay, so you're saying that this is not a phenomenon that, other countries must be dealing with this as well.
Yeah, and it's being heavily politicized due to the in this country at least due to the we're gearing up for the 2020 elections.
Okay, and so now it's being politicized in this country because of the 2020 elections.
Yeah.
Okay.
And as far as the identities and motives of the shooters, what's been politicized, as a lot of people are like, well, it's a lot of white supremacists and stuff, even though some of them it seemed like were more left-leaning and some of it was just kind of random. And there's lots of questions being asked about whether or not the Texas person really posted that manifesto or was it, posted by anyone else. And yeah, so I'm definitely, I mean, there's on the left here, people are really kind of pushing the buzzword of white supremacists, and they're basically, from what I'm looking at it, they want to box in every angry white person as a white supremacist. So they're basically, we have no reason to be angry about anything, or we're a white supremacist.
Okay, so you're feeling that they're taking that on the left, they're taking the gun issue and then conflating that with white supremacy. So you feel that if they're, you're white and you're angry about something, you're being accused of being a white supremacist without anybody really taking the time to look at the content of what's going on, what you're saying.
Yeah. And I try to get too wrapped up in it because, I mean, that's part of the trap. People are trying to gaslight people to get us pissed off, excuse my language. And I try to see through that, but still it's pretty freaking annoying. I can tell when I'm being targeted, So, yeah, it's pretty annoying. I'm not sure how to address this, but like just the focus on gun laws, I think is pretty laughable. I think if you're angry at the world and you want to cause harm, I mean, you're going to cause harm one way or another.
Okay. So you're saying that you try to kind of stay at a remove, to not get caught up in the passions of the moment. But it's hard when you feel that people are mischaracterizing what's going on and over politicizing it. And so, you're concerned about that. And so you're kind of like feeling your way as to, well, what is my, what's the issue here and what's not? And you definitely don't feel that guns are the issue.
No, I mean, like if I was hopefully nothing like that happens here and I'm all of a sudden a suspect. But I mean, there's many ways to kill people. I mean, I'm surprised there's been more creative ways. I mean, you could poison a water supply and kill a lot more people. I mean, I think the focus should be like, why are people angry, and address that. You can't stop a population ready to kill each other once they get to that point. They're going to figure out a way. We got to figure out a way, figure out why is everyone angry, and is there a solution with that? You can't, you can't just declaw everyone and expect that to work, nor would that be a society I would want to live in.
Okay. So you're saying, I think by declaw you meant by taking the guns away, and you're
Yeah.
saying that would be ineffective rather than trying to understand the root causes of the anger that the people have and address those issues.
Yeah, I think that should be, addressed, because, like, I just feel like you can't stop. I mean, I could go in statistics. It's pretty ridiculous how they focus on like some of these mass shootings is a very low percentage of the murder that happens in this country. I believe the weekend a lot of these mass shootings happened, there was like just as many murders in Chicago, and it was just like business as usual there. It's not front line headlines because it's not a spectacular explosion of one person, doing a lot. So you have like one person out of 100 killing 20, but then maybe you have like out of those 100 people, all of them together kill 20 people. That makes sense. Like, it's like, yeah, I could explain that better, but it's the types of killings that get the headlines, yet there's all sorts of killings going around everywhere. My time's up.
Right. Okay. So we have time, and we can take some more time if you really have more to do. I think we can be somewhat flexible here. But but the main point that I got is that that the media hypes the killings as if like you're going to step outside your door and there's going to be a mass murderer standing right there ready to gun you down. Whereas statistically, these you're pretty safe, and then these mass killings are not necessarily a major threat, not as much as, for instance, say mosquitoes that spread malaria.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't compare it to mosquitoes. That would be gaslighting a bit. It sucks.
Okay.
There's obvious psychic trauma that happens when these things happen.
Okay.
But statistically, just on murders in general, I could, as far as just like a white supremacist mass murderer, I don't think is the number one homicide.
Okay, so you're saying this focus on white supremacist murderers, they're not a bunch of them. They're a statistically small part of the the population.
Statistically, a small part of the murders.
Well, the murders. Okay, thank you. And there was one other thing you wanted to correct. And
I wouldn't compare it to mosquitoes because it's
right. The mosquito analogy was a bad analogy, and And
that
because
would be like a gaslighting technique I see used that's actually causing people to get more angry.
Right. And so I really hear also your concern about the psychological trauma of these things, even if people aren't being affected, and a concern about that, and wanting to minimize psychological trauma as much as possible around these issues.
Yeah. I could go on, but I don't want to hog the time.
Okay.
Thanks.
Sure. Okay. All right. All right. Karolina, will you listen to me?
Yes, I'm listening.
Okay. Well, this is an issue that I actually do have a lot of experience in. I think that I'm a special education teacher. I dealt with kids who were in danger of going to jail, going to the hospital, suicidal adolescents. So people, students with very extreme behaviors. I'll stop there.
So what I'm hearing, you're saying that you spent most of your life in a kind of social background of your professional life were people who actually were endangered by such situation, gun violence, being injured, or being arrested because of violent behavior, and you had to deal with it.
Right. And mostly violence like that is a crime of passion in the moment. It's when people, as we would say that most murders are committed in families and in a crime of passion of the moment. And I was attacked twice over my career with an intent to really take me out. And both times they were with chairs because they didn't have guns. So this is a plea to everyone who listens to this to not put guns in the school. It's the absolute wrong thing to do. And I say that I would have been shot twice or, okay.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you saying that such events happened always in kind of emotional, a highly emotional state of perpetrators. And the other thing is that usually it happens in family or other a circle of people the person knows. And it's always emotions kind of are involved in such act usually. And you are referring to the situation, to the idea to give to put guns in the schools because of some school shootings. And you are saying that it actually will endanger even more
Absolutely.
students and teachers. You are recalling situations from your life when you were attacked, and you were lucky because those guys didn't have guns, so they attack you very severely with chairs, and you survive. But if they had any access to gun, you might not survive this situation.
Right, or the students.
Yeah.
So I just went to the graduation ceremony, and one of the leading seniors who read a senior speech when I worked there 3 years ago had phoned in a bomb scare. And because we knew who he was, he doesn't mean it, but that's the point of communication. Because we know who he was, we just kind of went through. The whole school got a commendation, and instead of ending up in jail, the student now has a future.
Okay, so you say you're telling us another story of a situation when one of the students who were ending school kind of created situation of emergency because he said that there is a bomb threat, I suppose. But thanks to some communication skills, you actually knew this student very well, and you knew that it's probably just a joke or just the threat to make everybody scared, but it's not real. You obviously followed some instructions and typical procedures in such situation, but you didn't cause the student to go to jail because of this threat. So you believe that thanks to good relations and good communication with students, even in with students in troubles, that actually the tool for safety, for security in school.
Right.
And the student have his future still.
Absolutely. Thank you. That was excellent. And then finally, I want to take the last 38 seconds here to say I'm trying to institute a program of listening circles in schools. And again, if anybody's hearing, I'm talking to anybody who will listen to me about this. A credentialed teacher, I'll come to your school for a month. every day, geographically enabled, and do this. This is an excellent, and especially I'm calling on mothers, demand action. This would be an excellent counterpoint and would show excellent statistics about reducing these sorts of gun deaths, because you would predict them, early, and you would predict them early, and you'd be able to intervene early and identify these especially young men before they then make their move. I'll stop there.
So you telling us very passionately about the better solution for violence at school, and you propose the system of practicing empathic listening, speaking and listening, and you give a proposal to organize such workshops for even months in every school where certificate or well educated and qualified teacher might teach right communication between students and between teachers and students, I suppose. And that will be a true situation when it's possible to not forecast. Okay, I've forgotten the word.
That's fine. You could go with that.
I mean, predict. Yes, predict. Predict a dangerous situation before they escalate.
Okay, and it's cheap.
And it's cheap. And you're saying that it's cheap, and you want anybody who hear our who is listening to our talk to take attention to what you're saying.
Thank you. I feel fully heard. That wasn't easy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so I will choose Sophia. Would you reflect me?
Is my sound on?
Yeah. Okay. When I hear about such situations in the United States, I always think about you guys there, because I perceive you as, consider you as my friends. And especially when I hear about some incidents in California, whatever it is, there were fires in California. I was thinking about you guys. Now there are shootings in your country, and I again thinking about you. Where are you? Are you safe? Well, that's what I'm thinking when I hear such things.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is that you always think about us, no, not us, Edwin, and all the people who live in the United States. When you hear about these things, and it seems like you are somewhat worried whenever you hear incident.
Yeah. And so this is one thing. It always comes to me and to my mind. Okay, where are they? What they do? Are they safe? And well, so this is kind of emotional reaction. I always want to kind of call you on WhatsApp or whatever and check if you are okay. That's kind of a reaction I have. And I always have to wait patiently to not make any alarm. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're just validating now that you really feel some worry and fear whenever you hear about this, and that you somewhat pace yourself and wait and see. And not, it sounds like you don't want to react immediately.
Yeah. I don't want to overreact and, to make any alarm. I hope always that, well, you are safe, but, you never know. So that's one thing. Another thing is that what David said, we don't have such situation here in Poland. Well, we didn't have such situation until now, maybe. Truly, if there were any protests on the street, political, economical, yeah, people sometimes put tires on fire or throw away some food or something like that. For example, farmers or something like that, they blockade, and they organize blockades. Uh, yeah, but there is no such violence like regular fightings on the street between protesters and police. That doesn't happen in Poland. Well, maybe sometimes, yeah, sometimes yes, but it's kind of always it's not typical situation here, and nobody has until now nobody had any um, privilege to have gun privately. It's very limited.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing you say is that you can't really relate to the kind of violence that there is in the United States because you don't see that in Poland in that proportion. Um, and what was the last thing you said?
That gun ownership is very limited.
Yeah. People
If
don't
you
have
are
the
a
privilege to own
yeah,
a there. Yes.
yeah, if
Yeah.
you are a hunter or you work in security or in police, you might have guns in some special situation. Hunters can buy rifle, but that's it. And but actually now it's changing. And David, I believe, asked very well question. As I understand, David, he asked about frustration people experience. And that's the problem because now we become more and more violent country. And it's a political conflict between people who call themselves patriots, but they are perceived. Thank you, Bill. They perceived themselves, but other people perceive them as nationalists and even supremacists and fascists, Nazi. And on the other side, we have radical left groups and, well, LGBTQ communities, groups, organizations that might be not left socially or economically, but kind of culturally, they are put it on the left side of the scene. So there is a huge, enormous tension here, and we actually witnessed regular fights in one of our cities lately, where LGBTQ march for equity has been attacked by soccer hooligans that usually fight with each other, but this time they joined their forces and attacked LGBTQ in regular street fights. Okay, sorry, Sophia, I talk too much.
No, it's fine. I'm with you. What I'm hearing you say is that you're still in sort of like comparing, and I hear some kind of worry about this that this might happen in Poland because you see more and more polarization in the country where people are either to the right, nationalists and radical left, and this kind of far away ideas, you feel some worry that this kind of polarization might trigger up some eventual violence in the future. Yeah, and you have also had that experience.
Well, I didn't have this experience personally.
Okay.
I'm wrapping up, but we witness just in country. Okay, I learned from news from my friends that what's happening, and the problem is what sort of frustration grows in people's souls that let them so easily be triggered and to the violence, that sort of violence. What happens to them? What happens in our society that people are so frustrated that this is the only way they can release the tension and frustration? That's my question.
Yeah, so I'm hearing you pondering about what this frustration is about and how we can come to a place where people act it out, basically.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sophia. I feel heard.
Yeah. Edwin?
Listening.
I just feel very proud of myself because I came to this event feeling very triggered, and I was wondering if I could even listen because I was so triggered. But I thought that this might be a practice ground, and I know that I'm going to be heard eventually. So I think that thought just calmed me down.
So when coming here, you were really concerned about being triggered and not even be able to speak or listen, but just knowing that you would be heard in this group just made you start calming down and feeling more grounded.
Yeah, and I really want to come back to this topic because I really agreed with David that I'm also asking the question of why are they so angry? And I also agree with Bill and Karolina that yeah, this is an action of impulsivity. We also have gun violence here in my city, and that is what police say all the time. They don't shoot people. They don't sit and think, now I'm going to shoot a person. They act on their emotions very quickly. So I want to come back to that, but you can reflect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're saying that this impulsivity is sort of a core issue, that people are just acting on this impulse, and that David mentioned it, as well as the police in your area have talked about it. So you've heard other people talk about this quality of being impulsive and just acting on your emotions, feelings.
Yeah, exactly. And I need some empathy about what I was triggered about. I was right now excluded from a group, Facebook group, that was very important to me. It was about detoxing from medication naturally. And the reason why I got excluded was because I blocked an admin, and I didn't know it was an admin. And they just threw me out of the group. And I just feel very judged. And I had a conversation with this woman right now, and yeah, I just feel very sad about it because I just explained to her I didn't know that was an admin, and she just blocked me on Messenger too. So Yeah, I'm sitting with that right now.
Mm-hmm. So you're just feeling triggered, feeling upset because you're feeling judged by someone that in a group that you were excluded from. Somehow I didn't quite get it, but that you blocked an admin and you didn't realize it was an admin, and then they kind of excluded you from the group. Sounds like you feel like you're being judged for what you did. You tried to explain it, and then they just kind of cut off the connection. So you're just feeling upset about that. And
yeah, I'm feeling upset and sad because that was
sad.
a really good group to be in. And I also, the reason why I blocked this person was because I had clearly stated in a post that I didn't want advice, I just wanted empathy. And she just kept on giving advice, and I ignored her comments in the beginning, but then she started commenting on other people's comments, and I just got so annoyed. So I told her, please, can you just let me have my space? And I just told her, I just set a boundary basically, and she didn't accept that. She just kept on pushing, and finally I just blocked her because I don't want that kind of people in my life. And it happened to be an admin.
Okay, so you're in this group, you had made a comment, and you were just asking for empathy on the comment, and that she kept posting sort of advice or sort of comments like that, which were not empathic, and you kind of ignored her for a while, but then she started commenting on other people's posts, and then you just didn't like those, that it wasn't, you had kind of asked for just empathy, so you blocked her. And then it turns out she's an admin that has power to kind of kick you out of the group. And then you're just feeling sad and frustrated that because you really enjoyed the group, because you kind of really like that group, and you just feel sad that you've been excluded.
Yeah, it felt kind of like a punishment from her side. Sort of like, yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. I feel heard. Now I can focus on this topic.
Yeah, now you're feeling heard for your pain, and you're feeling more present. You can focus on this. You just want to really share what you're kind of bringing to the group.
Yeah, thank you so much, Edwin.
Okay. Then I'll speak to Karolina.
Okay, I'm listening.
Yeah, the one thing, just on the different topics, one thing I was thinking of was about the framing of how we look at these different things. If we frame it in terms of a lack of empathy, for example, the shooters, people who are doing these shootings, that there's a lack of empathy that they have for the people that they're impacting, right? If you kill somebody, you're not empathizing with them, and you're not empathizing with the people that you're having an impact on. So sort of frame the looking at these issues from an empathy or empathy deficit mindset is something I've been thinking about.
So you want to talk a little bit about this situation of shooting and killing somebody from in empathy terms, and you try to kind of analyze it in terms of lack of empathy to the person that the shooter attacks, and the lack of empathy to this person who become a victim. Am I correct?
Yeah, exactly. And it kind of ties in with what David was saying, that this is being kind of politicized, and it becomes that it's all about white supremacy. It's about being around hate. So that's a certain lens to look at it from, right? And we had, when the political right came to Berkeley, it was all like, oh, the haters are coming to Berkeley. We all have to get in a big uproar. And there was signs all over, you know, stop the hate, basically. We're against hate. And it seems to me that that framing just creates more polarization versus saying, okay, there's a lack of empathy here. We want to create more empathy by empathizing, right? We don't create more empathy by judging people. We create more empathy by empathizing with people. That's what we try to do with the empathy tent, you know, so.
So you see you kind of see two layers in those situations. One is the act of shooting or mass shooting, and the other thing is kind of political
Response, maybe.
a response to that, and kind of overuse the situation for political purposes. And you see that it always kind of leads to polarization between the political actors, and there is a lot of labeling, like it's connected to supremacism or right-wing groups, or that sort of accusation. And you think that, well, if I understand you correctly, it's kind of labeling that that cuts the real insight in what's happening.
Yeah.
Because when there is any right-wing march in Berkeley or California, which is mostly left state, there is always kind of demand of stopping hate, and you perceive it as a kind of labeling, not trying to understand what's happening.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not an empathy. It's not framing it around empathy. Like, oh, here we think that these people are unempathic. Well, you know, instead of trying to beat them up, well, try to empathize with them. And two, I have to kind of get better at empathizing with the left in those situations too. Like, you know, Berkeley, everybody's afraid. You know, there's just this fear coming. So I got to sort of empathize with them. And yeah.
Mm-hmm. So if I understand you correctly, you're saying that instead of accusing the opponents of lack of empathy, we should try empathize with them. But also you would like to empathize with those who live actually here, well, where you live, and they represent kind of left wing, and they feel scared because of what's happening. So you would like to empathize with
Both sides.
Both sides.
Both sides, yeah. And how
instead of labeling them.
Yeah. So it's more like a shift, a mindset shift of with an empathic mindset shift, looking at the situation from an empathic point of view, and then it's, you know, with the shooting, it's the people who are impacted by it. They're the one, they need huge amount of empathic, you know, presence. Like, you know, they're totally decimated. They have a huge loss. It's the empathy, which is a healing aspect for the people who've been impacted. It's like the lack of empathy of the person that did the shooting, and then for them upstream, what was their life like where they had a lack of empathy? Because I think if any of those shooters had been in like empathy circles or in an empathic environment, that would have headed them off from going down that path. So it's, you know, it's just looking at the full spectrum in it from an empathic, in an empathic way.
So what I'm hearing are two things. One thing is kind of shifting our way of thinking about such situation from typical judgment and using in politics those situations for political purposes, but first of all judging not trying to empathize and kind of get into the word of people who are involved in such situation. And the other thing is that you see the situation when everybody focus on the event, but not many focus on feelings and experience people who are impacted by this act of violence. And you think this is the thing that should happen, that this is the place where empathy should be involved.
Yeah,
And
I would just add it needs to be in all the different areas, you know, we just need empathy all across the full spectrum of experiences.
okay, so you mean that it's not just the people who are impacted, but also people who perpetrate some situation, so to speak, and you see that there is a lot of different roles, so to speak, in those situations, and people in those situations need, all of them need empathic listening or approach,
Yeah,
to give them chance to release.
yeah, we need a whole cultural shift, seems to me. Just
Yeah,
yeah, I feel
yeah. So it's not only a kind of shift of our thinking, but also cultural shift.
Yeah.
For you.
I feel heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I have problem because I always have problem with understanding David. I'm sorry, David. It's so difficult sometimes. Well, it's better and better, but still I have some problems with understanding you. So probably I will choose Bill, maybe. Bill,
Listening.
okay. I would like to come back to this frustration aspect again. In the last few years, I observe rising tension in the society. I live in a society. I was born in behind the Iron Curtain. I grown up behind the Iron Curtain, and I was adult person when the system collapsed in 1989, 1990. Everything was changing, and next 30 years, my country and my society went through enormous, very rapid transformation, economical and social. And this transformation caused a lot of people enormous, great frustration.
Okay.
I stop there.
So you're recounting the history in Poland, that you were born behind the Iron Curtain, you grew up behind the Iron Curtain, and you were already an adult in 1989, 1990 when the Iron Curtain came down. And in the ensuing 30 years, there's been a tremendous transformation in the society, and so that you're really concerned and you're looking into the turmoil in your society right now.
Yeah, there was a lot of injustice, social and economical injustice in our country before this transformation. But it was different kind of injustice. We were still more or less equal. Obviously, there were people that were quite poor, and people mostly on exposed post-political and, so to speak, business. It was kind of state economy, but still there were people, we call them technocrats, bureaucrats, who were managing our country, and they were very privileged people. But there was no such huge differences, and we kind of jumped into free market, so-called free market economy. I don't believe it's free. And the transformation didn't protect the weakest social groups in our country. They were left for themselves. Nobody cared about them. And now we are harvesting consequences of this situation.
Okay. So in what was then communist Poland, there was a lot of equality. Not that everybody was pretty much at the same level. There were a few of the elite, the technocrats or the bureaucrats, but basically, if you saw somebody on the street, you were dealing with the same problems and economic situation. Once the Iron Curtain came down, then there was a so-called free market, which has its own, hidden dangers in it, and that came about, and there was a tremendous transformation and turmoil, which created many more classes in society. And so now there are very much, and especially, it didn't go any far enough or to address the most needy and vulnerable in society who needed support.
And the problem is that we are probably the only country in our region of Europe that is so economically and socially polarized. Other countries of former Soviet bloc are not that horribly polarized in economical factors. We have a huge gap between upper classes and top management, and then we have a huge group of maybe IT engineers who actually had very stabilized situation, but then the huge gap in income, and most of us earn money that let you barely survive from 1 month to another. And the whole economy kind of, and I like the term economical culture, or because it kind of the advertisement, the value of our culture are kind of, you need this, you need that, you need more, you have to buy new, and it kind of creates greedy people. Well, being greedy is good in this culture, and okay, thank you. But people can't afford what they are taught to, how to say that? I mean, people in this culture, people value, appreciate money, material things they actually can't afford because they are poor. So they can't give future to their children. They don't have enough good enough healthcare because they are poor, and so on and so on. There is a lot of things we can't afford because we are simply poor people, most of the society, and it always sounds like it's our fault. We didn't manage. That's what this culture teaches people. If you are not successful, it's your fault. It's not the truth about this society, but that's how people feel, and they are frustrated and they need something positive, and that's how they radicalized and try to find a new identity and kind of release their frustration. That's what I believe. Okay. I stopped there.
Okay. So you reiterated or repeated about the tremendous income gap, wealth gap in your country. And that when the Iron Curtain came down, essentially what you what got was what we call in this country a consumer culture, a culture that glorifies buying things, and you identify yourself by the things you buy, not necessarily. And what happened is that the Polish, the great mass of Polish people can't afford such things. So they're overextending themselves. They're making bad choices. They're buying, fancy things rather than things that they really need, like healthcare. And then the government's response, rather than to take responsibility, or the ruling class or the oligarchy, whatever, is to blame the poor people, that somehow you didn't take your 2 cents and and spread it around, so you had a nice house and a swimming pool or whatever. You should have done better if you'd only saved. And that, of course, is blaming the victim. And then these victims, or people who feel victimized like this, get more and more frustrated and lash out.
Well, I'm sorry for taking a little bit more time, but I need to do a little small correction. I
Sure.
didn't mean that somebody blames people of being not successful in their life. It's kind of cultural pattern. There is no any particular person who says that. Well, maybe those rich people say, well, if you are poor, it's your fault. Yeah, that's true. But it's kind of, it's a part of this culture, I would say.
Okay.
So there is no personalized enemy, and you need to create enemy. So you are
okay. So you're saying, so the correction is that there is no identified enemy. It was just an assumption that's brought about, and that some people certainly espouse that. But still people have felt frustrated in the sense that there's what we call here cognitive dissonance between what the expectations of society are and what they're experiencing.
Yeah. Thank you, Bill.
Sure.
Thank
okay. You. All right. David?
Yes, I'm listening.
Okay. Certainly when throughout my career, if you could boil down what we tried to do for students when they acted out physically, when they were violent, we would then try to find out what's the communicative intent. In other words, what are they trying to tell us? Even if it seemed crazy, we felt that there was a communicative intent. There was an attempt to communicate. And I'll stop there.
Okay, you were saying during your career as a teacher that whenever there was a violent outburst, there was an intent. There was an attempt to figure out what was trying to be communicated through this behavior, if anything.
Right. And early in my career, it just seemed crazy. Like, why is, throwing a chair against the wall? What does that mean? But as we started to understand the students and their motivations, it's amazing that all of these things are an attempt to connect with their fellow person. The pain is nobody sees me, nobody hears me. I gotta say something. I'll stop there.
You said at first it seemed pretty random and crazy to you that why would someone throw a chair against the wall? But after a while you found out a lot of times it was people trying to connect with other people around them. They just didn't know how.
Exactly. Connect poorly. Right. And I was just amazed, and I still am, about how we are social animals, and it's built into our DNA. I'll stop there.
And you think I think you said it's surprising or amazing to you that, in general, that we are social animals by nature.
Yeah, it's not surprising that that to me, but that how strong that impulse in us is to be part of some sort of social structure.
Yes, um, that to a strong degree, you have found that we have a need to connect with other people as humans.
Right, right. And the other thing is that because I got feedback because I was being attacked, pretty much every day, when we were able to establish what the message was, the violence went down.
And from your experience, from your job, you found that violence went down once if you were able to establish what the person was trying to communicate or what was going
Right.
on.
Mm-hmm. And I was a trainer for 25 years of nonviolent crisis de-escalation. So I would walk into a lot of crazy situations, and so one example of this is a young child is just screaming, throwing things, and just completely off the wall. And so the first thing I'd say, well, what happened? Okay, so I'll stop there.
So you said in your facility that you were kind of a designated nonviolent communications type step-in person. So
Mm-hmm.
you got involved, you got in the middle of a lot of this stuff, and I'm kind of spaced out. You went to a situation where someone was throwing stuff on the walls and stuff.
Right, it was a young child who was absolutely like you would look and just throwing, kicking, biting, spitting, the whole range. And so then the first thing I said, well, I want to find out what's the communicative intent. And the issue was that the bus driver had not let him eat his lunch on the bus in the morning. And so then the issue is somehow of nurturing. And so I went and I got a glass of water, and I gave him a glass of water, and the violence stopped.
So through investigation, you found out that it had something to do with him not this problem child not being able to eat something or drink something on the bus. So I guess you figured out he was hungry or thirsty, and you gave him like something to drink, and that helped.
Right. And the answer to our problems, from my experience, lies in the understanding of those things.
We thought the answer to a lot of these problems lies in the understanding of like what what's the communicative. I can't say. What's the person?
Yeah, the dynamic of that sort of thing, the pattern. Yeah. Thank you, David. I feel very heard.
Okay. I guess I'll pick Edwin because I think I'm going to use some references that might be best for people.
Okay, listening.
All right. So yeah. First of all, I'd like to apologize for those. I feel like for those that are not in our country, I hope you can relate with some of this, but the topic is kind of been a focus in this country, but I'm sure you can relate it to other stuff. So that being said, yeah, I think it's like a lot of people just disconnect themselves from like mass murders or just stuff they don't like, and I'll get more into that.
So you're I think I kind of lost it. That you're wanting to say that if this is somehow relative to what's going on here in the United States, and so for the others that you're sort of apologizing that this is maybe not quite relevant to them.
Or maybe some of the references,
Other references. It might be American-specific references.
And then I felt like a lot of people just can't connect with people who do horrible things like this.
Oh, okay. So there's sort of this sense that we can't connect with people who do horrible things, in the sense that we can't identify that that's part of us.
Yeah. Example, like I think one of the first shootings that I remember that I think got a lot of media attention was the Columbine shooting here, which I'm sure that was a shooting in the 90s. And that happened at a high school. A couple kids wearing all black kind of went in and just started killing folks, and then they killed themselves, and that was like that kind of was the start of an era at that point, I think.
So just referencing the Columbine, which is sort of the start of this mass shooting sort of era, where the students went and shot up a school and then killed themselves.
Yeah, at the time, I was around those kids' age, and I just recently quit high school for like a year or something. By the time that happened, and everyone around me was just like, "Oh, this is so horrible. How could anyone do that?" And I would just look them dead in the eye. I'm like, I know exactly how they felt. And I like you even less that you can't see why someone could be inspired to do that.
So you were in that age group, and you could actually sort of identify with them. People were saying, "Oh, I don't know how that could happen," but you could sort of really see why people were doing it and sort of identify it, and were maybe even a little irritated that people couldn't understand it.
Yeah, because in school I was an outcast. I had a lot of problems at home. And I had a lot of pent up rage that I did not know how to express. I mean, I kind of did, I guess. But I, I was able to let out a lot of that through music and artwork and other means. But like I I was not equipped to deal with high school at all. I hated everyone. After a while, after various instances of people like ganging up on me and stuff, I hated everyone. I wouldn't blink an eye. Everyone died at that age. It's taken me years to kind of get over that, actually.
Yes, you could really identify with the students that did that, because you had, sounds like, a similar experience of being bullied. You just couldn't, you just kind of hated the school, and you just hated even being there. So you could really identify, as well as they had those family issues. So you had family issues where you couldn't kind of work those out. You had the school issues. There was no place to really vent and be heard about what you're experiencing. And then you did have music and some avenues to sort of vent those frustrations, where you could kind of understand people venting their frustrations and violence, it sounds like.
Yeah, because I think, especially men and in particular young men, I think that's the reason why sports is kind of pushed on younger men, just kind of give them a good avenue to let out a natural, healthy aggression. I think it becomes unhealthy when you don't know how to project it. Like we're aggressive by nature. It's good to channel that into something more productive and helpful to society. And a lot of this, like what people would call toxic masculinity, is basically regular masculinity distorted. But a lot of people seem to want to just target masculinity in general. Which you're not going to remove that. I mean, it would be kind of sad if you did, because I think it helps society if it's channeled correctly.
So there's this criticism of masculinity or toxic masculinity, and instead of channeling it in constructive ways, it's just sort of criticized. And it sounds like you're saying that there needs to be ways of constructively channeling that energy.
Yeah, because especially with younger people, I feel like empathy takes time. Like for me, I can only speak for myself, and I'm assuming it's from what I've noticed. Generally, longer you're alive, the more you kind of learn how to compromise and empathize just out of necessity. When you're younger, you're just like it's just impulsive emotions, and hormones, and crap, And so empathy is not always going to be an option. Sometimes someone who is more older and wiser can use empathy to help, but can't expect a kid a lot of times to be empathetic naturally. That kind of comes with age, I think.
Yeah, so when kids are young and they got a lot of energy, they're impulsive, a lot of, hormones or whatever going around, that they're not necessarily going to be empathic. And as you get older, maybe you kind of become more empathic. And so it sounds like have some understanding that the young people maybe need more support because they're not going to have that empathy.
Yeah. How am I doing on time?
But you wrap it up.
Okay, I was one more point to make. I think as far as mass shootings are concerned, I like to compare the nature of mass shootings compared to just regular, good old everyday murder. The main difference is a mass shooter is generally something more of an emotional time bomb. And when they go out, they don't care about getting caught. So that's the reason they try to kill as many people as possible, because it doesn't matter. Their life is forfeit already. A regular murderer, generally, if it's premeditated or not, or just act of passion, they generally want to try to get away with it. So it's like kill a person or two and try to hide the body or something like that. But mass murders, just they've given up on life, and they're kind of like a time bomb that's built over a long period of time. And to get that angry, to be able to go against your self-preservation instincts, to kill, all these mass murders didn't expect to get away with this, and that's the reason why it's such a spectacle. That's the reason why one person killing 20 people gets more news coverage than 100 murderers killing 100 people, because it's more of an explosion. Even though there's more people got killed to those 100 people, it doesn't get news coverage from the 20 people who got killed by one person. So even though there's more death involved, this is more spread out, so people don't notice it as much. But still, number-wise, it's more of an epidemic. So I think all these things should be looked at.
Yeah, so you're saying look at the whole spectrum of what's going on. There's a lot of people getting killed, just kind of one-on-one. But these people doing these mass shootings, that gets a lot of attention. And the aspect you're looking at there is sort of like a suicide. Like they're pent up, they're blowing up, and they don't expect to live. This is like this is their way of blowing up and kind of killing themselves and taking as many people along as possible. And so kind of be able to see that spectrum of understand that spectrum, you think is important.
Yeah. I could go on about that, but I think you guys can read between the lines, and my time's up. Thank you.
Okay. All right, then I'll speak to Sophia. Yeah, that's again, I'm coming back to that cultural shift. It's I see that as sort of the task at hand, is how to make that cultural shift to a more empathic way of being. And so I always think of sort of strategies for doing that.
Yes, you're talking about this cultural shift with empathy, bringing empathy into our culture, and which strategies to use to reach that goal.
Yeah, and like David's saying, the people who were doing the blow-ups and all that, you can just see that they had like a lack of empathy in their life. So if they would have been surrounded with empathy, if their family would have had family empathy circles from the time they were young kids, if the school had like empathy circles with the students on an ongoing basis, so they didn't feel alienated and disconnected. There's just like tons of stuff that can be done to make that cultural shift. It's more like, what does it really take to make that cultural shift? It's so that's kind of what I think about. I guess I just feel that that's sort of like the solution, or like the direction to go. And it's just like how to implement it when the culture is so big. Like, how do we, have an impact to make that shift?
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is you thinking about different strategies, bringing in empathy and families and bringing it in school. And you basically see this as the solution.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a general direction. It's like the empathy circle for me is like a first step. You were feeling kind of pretty upset coming in here because you'd been rejected. We're carrying that, but just by being heard, you felt kind of grounded, you felt reconnected. So those are just like little simple things that, make us feel better as human beings, feel more connected. So that's just a simple example how, we kind of heal, I guess.
Yeah, so you were just mentioning that I came in with a lot of emotions of being rejected, and just by being heard in that, I felt the sense of being grounded. And yeah, you see that as such a simple practice.
Yeah, and to spread it. And my sense is that the culture sort of, it discounts what we're trying to do. There's sort of a general discounting, or, it wants to kind of fight. It's like if we just fight enough, battle enough, we can beat the other side, we can beat evil. And, it's just kind of looking at how do we make this bigger shift, and kind of coming up with strategies. And yeah, so I was just thinking about that.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is that you maybe are thinking about a strategy of just fighting, just take the battle of bringing in empathy into the world.
I'm saying that's how the culture sort of sees things.
Oh.
The culture says we just have to beat each other up, and then we're going to win. Goodness or whatever is going to win.
Okay. Yes, yeah. So you're talking about the culture, and that's what you want to
shift.
Yes.
Yeah, and it kind of dismisses what we're doing. It says, "Oh no, that's." There's a real dismissal in the culture. But I am just trying to think of like, what do we do to, make the culture sort of take attention, and I think we need to be more assertive. It's like we need a sense of assertion of the empathy, of the value of empathy. So.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is, yeah, you just keep pondering which strategies to use, and you're talking about asserting. I'm not sure what you mean by that, but yeah, bringing in assertiveness in the empathy circles.
Right, into the movement. Into the broader movement.
Yeah.
So I've been working on our governor for the state of California on having him do an empathy circle, because the idea is we need high-profile people to do empathy circles, and we need to sort of assert that they need to take part and not take no for an answer. So our governor, you don't have to reflect all this, I'm going to go on a little bit, regarding the shootings, he had a council about that, and he talked about, he says, I just have the quote here, "I think that goes deep to the issue of how we raise boys to be men, goes deeply to the values that we tend to hold dear, power, dominance, and aggression over empathy, care, and collaboration." So here's our governor talking about empathy, the importance of empathy. And I've talked to him twice personally about doing empathy circles, and he's kind of avoiding empathy circles. And so I really am trying to focus on getting him into an empathy circle. So that's sort of like a big, strategy that I've got.
Right. So you're seeing the governor talking about that we have to think about certain aspects, bringing in care and thinking about how this masculinity is affecting our boys, toxic masculinity, but it doesn't seem like he wants to do that in action.
Yeah.
And that's yeah, so
that's where the assertiveness is going to come in. Assert to him. So Monday, his chief of staff and our local assembly person here are having a meeting. So I'm going to go there and try to talk to his chief of staff about doing empathy circles. And I'm going to kind of escalate this. I have to fill out a form to have him, request that he do this empathy circle. And I've got the material. I have the person that was running for governor on the Republican side. He gave me his personal phone number and has agreed. I called him up a couple of weeks ago and talked to him, and he agreed to do an empathy circle. So I'm kind of like escalating this up to the steps towards getting the governor to do it. And I just talked to my brother yesterday who has a bunch of money, and he said he would finance it because he's a Republican. So from the Republican side, he's willing to kind of finance that, you know, if the governor won't do the empathy circle, I'm going to set up the empathy tent on the Capitol steps and just stay there until he does an empathy circle. So I'm kind of like ratcheting up the strategy that we got to be assertive, you know, for these politicians and these people to, you know, do it. So anyway, I'm just kind of sharing that here.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're sort of like pushing this onto the government, because
Yeah.
I'm hearing some sort of certainty that if they just try it, it's gonna make an impact. So that is why you are so assertive.
Yeah.
About, yeah.
And that's what I like about Extinction Rebellion, because they're into the same thing. Like, oh, nobody's doing anything about climate change. They just ignore it. We have to take, you know, nonviolent social action to make this happen, to have people pay attention. And it's worked. They were all over the media in the UK. You know, it's kind of spreading. So I really like Extinction Rebellion from that social, you know, political, nonviolent action to kind of, you know, get your point across. So I'm trying to learn a lot from them with their strategies and stuff.
Yeah, so you're watching Extinction Rebellion making their actions, and now you see the results of that they are all over media and social media.
Not just social media, but the mainstream media in the UK. They're on all the shows there.
Yeah, so you're seeing that this has an effect, and you want to sort of be inspired by what they are doing.
Yeah, I feel very heard. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll choose David.
Hello.
Hi. I just want to say that I don't have any problems with your references, so I understand them, just so you know that.
Okay, you said that you understand my references. That shouldn't be a problem.
No, yes, exactly. Yeah, you're getting so many thoughts when you listen to everybody, so it's hard. Like, oh, I want to say something on that. I want to say something on that. But I just want to. It's so interesting to listen to Bill and his experiences with children, and I agree with what he is saying. I have worked with very difficult children also, so I know how that is, especially boys who has issues with regulating their emotions.
So first of all, you said that it's interesting hearing all the different ideas and stuff, and you keep on wanting to comment on different stuff. I usually keep notes, but are just, you know, memory. Anyway, and you also said that you also related with Bill as far as you also have experience with dealing with kids or young people, and especially young boys have issues, you know, particular issues with aggression, I'm guessing.
Yeah, exactly. And I just want to tell a little story about a boy who actually also started throwing things, becoming aggressive, hitting on, you know, breaking things. And what I did with him was that I threw a pillow. This was a 9-year-old boy, so he wasn't that, I felt kind of safe with him. I threw him a pillow and I told him, you're allowed to be angry, but you can only hit the pillow. And I just repeated that over and over again, because he kept on like, no, I want to break this. I want to, and I just told him, you're allowed to be angry. I have no problem with that, but you can only hit the pillow. And I just kept on like nagging him. And finally he realized that, okay, so it's safe. That was what I thought. It's safe for me to hit the pillow. And he started hitting the pillow. And it only took him 10 seconds to stop. And he said, I'm not angry. I just miss my mother. We were at a camp at that time. He said, I'm not angry. I just miss my mother. So I'll stop there.
So you were talking about this one, you wanted to talk about this one instance with this particular child that he was having aggression issues, I'm assuming, and you decided to give him a pillow, and you said that you're allowed to hit the pillow, but only the pillow. He was mad at first because he wanted to break other things and stuff, but you were persistent with him and told him that, you can hit the pillow, but nothing else. And he finally, I guess you said it, he wailed on the computer, on the pillow for about 10 seconds or so, and then I guess he came to epiphany, or just said that he's not really angry, he's just upset that because he missed his mother. But
yeah, and that brings me into what you said about men having sort of like more aggression, and I actually don't agree on that. I think that different kinds of genders have different kinds of anger, and what's that hormone called? The man hormone, testosterone. But what I think is that men are only allowed to be angry because that is socially accepted for men. So they are not allowed to sort of like express more vulnerable emotions. And that is also what I think is one of the issues about these shooters, that they express themselves in the way that it's culturally accepted.
Yeah, so I think you agreed with me that that aggression is the issue, but you disagree that it's just a problem with just men. You think there was some, there's some women with maybe higher testosterone levels, maybe, I think you were saying, and that you think the issue is not so much the anger, but that our culture maybe promotes that anger is the only acceptable emotion that men can express.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, exactly. And I think it's much harder for men to be vulnerable in society. It's kind of shamed. And I see that as a big issue.
yeah, you said that you feel like it's harder for men to show vulnerability because that's shamed in our society, and you think that's a big issue.
Yeah. Thank you. I can go on much longer, but I'll stop it there.
Okay. Thank you, Sophia.
Thank
Okay, I
you.
guess I'll talk to Bill.
Listening?
Yeah. I guess I try to stay on topic, I guess aggression in general can be addressed with this mass shooter type thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the way our media is handling it is like the exact opposite of how this stuff should be handled. And I can't express enough that you have to look at the difference between suicidal mass murder run and just everyday aggression. One is taken to the point where like self-preservation is completely like discarded.
Okay. So you wanted to reflect on the distortion that the media is playing, and you talk about aggression and differentiating that from this, homicidal rage, and that there's a big difference and that needs to be pointed out and, looked at. aggression can happen all sorts of ways. Nobody gets hurt, but a suicidal rage is something else again.
Yeah, and as far as passing gun laws and stuff like that, I think you got someone, especially if they're reasonably intelligent, that they're angry to the point of wanting to like just go out in a bang. That there's unless you completely take all the rights from everyone, there's no way of stopping that if someone's made up their mind.
Okay, so you want to really emphasize that if somebody really has it in their mind to hurt people, they're going to be able to hurt people unless you take away everybody's rights for everything.
Yeah, especially if they're reasonably intelligent. Like, I mean, there's no law. I mean, you're not going to be able to stop them. I mean, you should try, but like to get to 100% stopping rate of something like that, we'd all have to basically be in chains.
Okay, so you're saying that the kind of societal control that would be necessary to stop 100% of these things would then enslave the whole society. But you also say that they should be tried to, we should think of ways to intercede or stop them, but it'll never be 100% effective.
And there's a million, like, in this, so I guess we should address the anger, and I think anger, just like any emotion, positive or negative, has its useful function. If you're never angry about something, if something bothers you, you'll never bother to change it. It's there for a reason, like pain. Pain is there for a reason. If you're in pain, that's your body telling you need to address something. If you're angry about something, I feel like your emotions telling you need to change, something needs to be changed. Same with sadness and depression. So I think they're like, especially some of these ridiculous slogans like, we stand against hate. I'm like, oh, okay, you're just gonna like erase hate from humanity. Yeah, right, whatever.
Okay. So you were talking about, that you find that, first of all, it's ineffective, that some people are saying erase hate, it's just, you're not going to do that. So what does that mean and why are you saying that? And give me you had a big piece on the other part and I'm kind of blanking on it. So can you just recap?
I forget.
Yeah. Okay. But essentially, to go back, maybe I'll pick it up. I'm sorry about that. But you were talking about, the anger and then the hate. You were talking about the positive aspects of aggression and anger, which then can motivate you to change your life. So you were trying to talk about that these are bad feelings or they're uncomfortable feelings, but they're not necessarily unproductive. They can lead to positive change. That's the part I missed.
Yeah. And I think that should be taken in perspective. I mean, the lingo that's going on in the media right now is just ridiculous. I mean, it's just like something drawn on a chalkboard that's not taking reality and everyday, on the ground experience, into consideration. It's just people just, it's just all hypotheticals and stuff like, we stand against hate. What do we do about white supremacy? Like, okay, well, define your terms. No one defines their terms on the media anymore. They're just like, there's like really basic, like shooting, killing, white supremacy, bad, crime, this, that, it's just like these weird, simple associations that, we live in a rich, multi-dimensional existence that, it's just, these talking heads really just get on my damn nerves. It makes me angry.
Okay. So you're talking about the distortions that the media, that in a kind of like a photo op, 2-second, thing, the media and the people don't really go into or really try to understand or describe something accurately, but rather they're just throwing labels left and right, which then distorts things, and that gets you angry.
Yeah. And so I mean, I think we're going through the growing pains of the information age. I feel like I like the internet. I like having instant access to people and information and stuff. Of course, there's a dark side to that, but I don't think there's any way around that. I think that genie's out of the bottle, and we need to learn how to deal with that. You know, we're going to have good people going to be able to use that technology to organize, and we have bad people that are going to be able to use that technology to organize. You know, so we can't take away the tools. We got to look at the culture and like what's making these bad people bad people. You know, and don't dehumanize them. You know, because they're a bad person's still a human, even though they're bad. You know, I mean, I know that's very simple, but you get the gist. You know, it's disconnect. You know, like the other. You know.
So you're saying that people who do these things, they're complex human beings, and so simply just laying evil or bad, a white supremacist or this or that, doesn't really get at the problem, and that we really have to kind of take a look, communicate, and try to understand in a much more deep way, without bias, what's going on.
Yeah, and also I was just talking about a lot of this stuff we're dealing with, these growing pains of the information age.
Right, that's right. I missed that. So you were talking about that the internet is good, and it's very useful, but we are going through growing pains, and there's a dark side, and so we don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater and take away the tool completely, but we have to kind of mature as a civilization in order to basically use the tool for constructive purposes.
Yeah, I feel hurt. Thank you.
Okay, good. All right. Let's see. I don't think I've talked to Sophia yet.
I'm listening.
Okay. So I think David made some really good points, and so did you, Sophia. And so I'll tell another story. I had a student. This student was, adult size, about 16. His parents were addicted to drugs, and they had weaned themselves off the drugs, and that made them more available for him, and he was making progress. But then his father hurt his back and went back on the drugs, and that caused them to pull back, and the young man was angry. I'll stop there.
Yeah, so you're saying that both me and David make good points, and you want to tell a story of a guy who had two parents who went off drugs, and then the guy was doing well. He was, I guess he was getting more attuned to, and then his dad hurt his back, and he fell into addiction again, and now suddenly that boy was not doing good anymore.
Right, and he had a crisis, and he actually went out and laid down in the middle of the street. So we had to set physical limits, and so we had to restrain him. And so I was restraining him, and it's I don't know, it's a whole mix of things. It's a whole mix of anger and hate, and you're sweaty. I always remembered him. He was trying to. We didn't use any pain holds or anything like that. So he was trying to dig his fingernails into my skin, and I was so sweaty, he was having a hard time finding a purchase. I'll stop there.
Okay, so it went so far that he lay down on the street. I don't know if he was trying to kill himself.
Yes.
Yeah, so you had to put up some boundaries around his basic care, and it led to you having kind of battles with him, a lot of sweating. I don't know what that was about, but
right.
he put his fingernails onto your arms. Yeah.
And so it was about 20 minutes of just this. You're sweating, he's trying to cut you, and he's like, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. And you just, there's a myth, I forget, it's not Sisyphus, but where the hero has to grab this god by the tail, and the god changes into a tiger, and you just got to hold on. And until finally, if you hold on fair enough, the god will then show themselves your real self and you can have a conversation. And that's what this felt like.
Yeah, okay. So it was a battle that went on for 20 minutes, and that was what all the sweating was about. And it felt, you make a comparison to fighting. Yeah, I've never heard of that story, but battles with God and trying to sort of like pin him down. Is that correct? And
well, yeah.
finally, yeah. Sorry.
Well, sure. So it's complex. So first of all, I want to get away from the word battle. We were, we really tried to. We were using empathy the whole time, and that's the key to this story. Because after saying I hate you and I want to kill you, I'm going to do all threats, then he said I want to kill myself. So he finally, he went there, and then I could say, well, I'm not going to let you hurt yourself here, but if you did something, I would be sad. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, so you want to get away from the word battle because you didn't feel that was what it was about. It was about empathy, and just seeing him first wanting to hurt you, and then when that had calmed down, he eventually said that he actually wanted to hurt himself, and you responded by telling him that would make you feel sad.
Right. And he didn't calm down. It's important to understand in the dynamic here. He didn't calm down. He went on. He was still agitated when he said, I'm going to kill myself. But when I was able to then, I'm on your side. I care about you. When I was able to give him that, then he calmed down.
Okay. So when he understood that you cared about him, that was the moment when he calmed down, because until then, he was still agitated.
Right. And that was one of the greatest gifts I've ever gotten in my life, as to understanding the nature and the source of human anger. It comes from human pain and human fear.
Yeah. So that was sounds like a lesson to you to sort of like learn about what anger is actually about, and it's about pain and fear.
Thank you, Sophia. I feel fully heard.
Thank you.
So I think we have time for one more. Then.
Okay, I'll choose Karolina.
Okay, I'm listening.
I guess I don't. Yeah, well, yeah, maybe I have some things more to say. I was just touched by Bill's story. I felt like crying when I heard that. It's just so moving, that so simple act. So, the kinds of thing that people are all doing that isn't noticed can do so much. I don't know if you know what I mean. It's not. It doesn't show on the news. It doesn't sort of like Bill just had a fight with this guy and that doesn't come up on the news, but that is what is important, I think.
Okay, so you are feel very emotionally touched by the story that Bill just told us. And you think that this is much more important story than all the stories we can see in the news, and it's too bad that such story about stopping child for killing himself and kind of embracing him emotionally and empathically should be the main story in our news, is not what we can see. That's how you feel about it.
Yes, yes, exactly. I just want to touch upon white supremacists that David was talking about a lot. I just Googled it because I realized that I was thinking that it was about white privilege, but maybe it isn't. Is it about white privilege? You can just nod if it is. Is it similar? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, he's saying.
That would take some time. Depends on.
Yeah. Okay. And yeah, it was supposed to be the topic of today, but it got changed. And I just want to touch upon that. We think that just because you're white, you have it all better than all the other people around, the colored people. And just by seeing that, white guys are committing these kinds of acts just proves that all human beings is suffering. And I just want to acknowledge that. Yeah, I'll stop there. That was maybe too. Yeah.
So you're referring to what David was telling us about the fact that we kind of connect white supremacists with this tendency of shooting and killing in mass murder action other people, and this kind of well, people think that that white supremacists or white men are privileged, but this very fact that they are involved in such shooting kind of shows us that it's actually opposite. They don't feel like privileged, they feel opposite, and they are frustrated.
Yeah, exactly. And just to touch upon that, all people need empathy. All human beings need empathy, and I think that if we have to talk about privilege, I think that people who don't have empathy in their lives, they are the ones who are underprivileged because they are missing out, and that is not a lot of people who get that.
I'm not sure if I understand you now. You're saying that that all the people need empathy, and actually people who are really privileged, and that wasn't clear to me.
People who have empathy in their lives, sort of like empathy circles, and people who they can get empathy with, those are the people who are privileged. And yeah.
So you mean that being privileged is not about
being white or being black or
wait, it's not about kind of typical measures of social status position in a society. We kind of miss the point that privileged people are those who have access to empathy, who feel treated empathically and can give empathy to others. Those people are privileged, and that should be a criteria for us of privilege.
Yeah.
Is it what you mean?
Yeah. And I just wanted to end with something. I don't remember what it was now. Yeah, just getting in empathy in schools, I think would create a very huge change. Yeah.
So you're referring to what was Bill saying on the beginning of our dialogue, that bringing empathy to the school and kind of practicing, training a lot empathy in schools can change the whole situation.
Thank you, Karolina. I feel heard.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll stop the recording and